All right, we are live. Yekusiel, welcome to the Michael Paris podcast. For those who don't know Yekusiel, he is the founder of Cornerstone Media, a web development agency that specializes in custom software solutions. He has a background in marketing, and he has helped well over 100 businesses and organizations elevate their brands. Lately, he's been focused on building custom software solutions for charity crowdfunding platforms. Yekusiel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's
Yeah,
an
it's an
honor.
honest pleasure. This is the second round because we had a little bit of internet connection issues. But we were initially saying how it's been so long since I've known you. And I think day one, you were just here building small websites and learning your way through the system. And it's been a pleasure keeping in touch with you, however briefly, and from time to time we touch base. But now you've kind of turned this into a whole company where you can support yourself and you're doing great work. So I'm super excited to kind of dive into that and kind of learn a little bit about your mindset and what you're up to, and hopefully give value to anyone listening.
Oh, for sure. And thank you for having me, first of all.
Yeah, yeah.
Been trying to get on the show for a while.
Yeah, uh, but it's good. It's back to life. And so you were telling me how we first met on Facebook many, many years ago on a Facebook chat, and then I immediately said, "Hey, let's jump on a call," which sounds exactly like something I would do.
Yeah, straight
And
into that cold messaging strategy, straight on to
yeah,
wasting all
yeah,
our
like
opportunities.
let's turn this into something. But I've got a good affinity for spotting people who have just good nature and a good work ethic, who are bright, who are intelligent, who like to work hard, and those are the people that I just like to quickly jump on board and associate myself with in any capacity. And you're certainly one of those people that have given me value, and you've brought some really high quality people my way, and I've certainly been grateful for that. But I kind of want to jump into your mindset here. So I know that you started off in yeshiva, and then, I'm always curious to know how someone from yeshiva transitioned into the tech world. So can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you and how that happened?
For sure. Yeah, so that's going back a while. So yeah, I started out, through the regular yeshiva system. I don't even have a high school diploma. My yeshiva high school did not have a secular studies department. So, I came out of high school after Bris Medrash. I went into regular. I had no formal education per se, and it's interesting because I was always kind of into tech as a kid. I always was intrigued by technology. Was always interested in technology. You would think that I would have known at that point already that like maybe I'm going to turn this into a career in the future. I think a lot of people, when they're super passionate about something, they're like, okay, we're going to do this at some point in some capacity. For me, it kind of stopped at just liking technology, and never really thought that I would really be able to support myself, off of technology. And I even found myself when I entered the workforce, pursuing a completely different career. I was actually an accountant for a little while. I did some school, and I worked for an accounting firm for about a year. After about a year, it was abundantly clear that that wasn't my path. So I got an opportunity to work for a news website, and from there, I got the opportunity to work for the Jewish Content Network, which is a very popular marketing firm in the Jewish world. And that was kind of, I would say, that was my the bridge into the world of marketing and internet and web and all these kind of cool stuff. And eventually, I was like, let me try to build some websites. And from there, it was just a straight path to where I am now. But it took a
That's
little
the
while.
story of our life. Yeah, I feel like you and I have a very similar story. I mean, I grew up in a very yeshivish environment, and I think slightly different is that I always thought I wanted to do tech. In fact, I don't entirely do tech right now, but I thought like that's like the core of my passion, and that's what I want to do. And in fact, I did achieve that milestone. And I think once I did graduate in computer science, I was like, actually, it's a subset of science that I love. This is I would love to leverage this for something else. But
Yeah.
it's so nice to see someone else who in yeshiva who learned through tech, and it looks like you just threw yourself in different places and forced yourself to learn and develop experience until you found really what you liked. How did you find? How did you find like programming it? And when you started making websites, like what were you using? I know it's getting a little nerdy, but I'm genuinely curious. What were you using when you first started making websites? And then like, did you change over time? And what was your reason for changing?
Yeah. Nerdy or not, I'm really happy you went there because this this is what I like to talk about. Um, so I started out with WordPress from day one, which is still what most of my projects are. I started using Divi, which is, as I'm sure you know, but for those who don't know, is a very popular WordPress theme, which also comes with a very powerful page builder, which gives you the ability to really build some pretty powerful, well, I don't know if you say powerful, but some pretty beautiful and
Yeah, it
dynamic
does.
pages, yeah, which doesn't really require any real programming skill. So, it's kind of how most people would probably understand Wix, but Wix is a specific platform which locks you into certain things and has its limitations, whereas here you have the full power of WordPress, but it gives you the ability to really have a tremendous amount of control over what you could build without ever writing a line of code. So that's how I
Right.
started initially. After a little bit of time, I started realizing that that's not going to cut it 100%, but I still kept with Divi for quite a while, and I just learned a little bit of JavaScript or a little bit of, or a lot of CSS on the side, and I was able to fill in the gaps where Divi didn't quite get me where I needed. As well as, I'm sure you know, like Elegant Themes has a tremendous amount of blog posts and documentation and things where they really show
Right.
you tutorials, how you could do things. So that sustained me for quite a while, and I built a lot of websites for a lot of clients who are very happy with the result through that. And then I will note that you had told me in a conversation at one time that custom WordPress themes are the way to go. They're much more lightweight. It gives you a lot more control. And I'm proud to tell you that I took that path, and the past bunch of jobs that I've done have all been that way. Now we build completely custom themes, complete HTML, CSS, JavaScript, everything from the ground up. Our own functions. I barely even use plugins anymore. We almost always, develop our own plugins. Yeah, that's just the way to go. And everything is so much more efficient. Everything is faster, more secure, and that's where I'm at. Custom.
Yeah, but so you build the custom themes, but do you still use Divi builders, or are you just
No.
PHP, HTML? Oh
Yeah,
wow,
straight PHP. We're writing our own templates. Every page has its own template, and it's all.
good for you. That's definitely a good idea. So I actually have a curveball for you. I kind of a little bit did a bit of a flip, but more about finding a middle ground. So
Okay.
yeah. Well, it also the truth is it's context dependent. So it depends what you're building. If you're building a quick 1, 2, 3 site, and sorry, just one step back here before I give you that answer. Um, Divi at the time was the king for the content builders. It was like by far the best tool. In my opinion, I think they've significantly trailed behind their competitive platform called Elementor. And that's taken center stage in the past year or so, especially in the past year, where they've really dealt with a lot of the clutter and the chug that comes with these content builders and created a platform where you really could scale up your systems. And in fact, we use Elementor a lot for some of our platforms. But it's more of a hybrid because understanding how to dig under the hood is absolutely essential. When you buy these like cheap templates, I also want to dissociate what a template is from those actual content builders, because you can use a content builder in a custom theme. But this particularly, the biggest real issue, in my opinion, is those templates, because they're so generically designed. They're designed for so many use cases. And I remember having this conversation with you, and I believe I gave you that analogy of it's like ordering a 90-wheeler truck to deliver a pie of pizza. And it's an analogy that I use all the time because it really it hits home to exactly what the issue is with these templates, is that it has all these additional features and you only need just a very small fraction. And then sometimes you even have to like force tweak some of these, the only 1 or 2 reasons why you're using the template to begin with. And it doesn't grow with time. And every time you want to add a new feature, it's super stressful. So yeah, spot on. So now you do custom themes, which is super cool. And I imagine you've honed in on your PHP as well. Why don't you tell me?
I mean, I would say particularly over the past year and change, my own personal development skills, programming skills have. I'm going to say I have 10x my skills, and I don't think I'm exaggerating.
Love it.
I will 100% attribute that to AI. I'm sure AI is a separate branch of this conversation. I don't want to rush there too fast.
No, this is fun. Saying GPT, like you would ask it to like go through your code or teach you certain stuff.
Yeah,
It's really good for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not one of those guys that's gonna tell you to just like hack something together using AI. If you know nothing about programming, just tell
Right.
it what you want. But if you understand programming fundamentals, you understand how things are supposed to work, you can effectively code in English. What that means is you can literally write to ChatGPT, I would like a function that takes this value, performs this action on it, and then performs that action, then returns the value, and then I'm going to write another function that's going to take that value and insert it into the database that way, and then I'm going to query it that way. If you understand the building blocks of what really has to happen, you could really use AI to tremendously accelerate your pace of learning. It's not just about copy and paste. You really have to analyze what it's telling you, and sometimes you even have to challenge it and say, is that really the most efficient way to do it? How about if, you know, and sometimes you're like, hey, you know what, you're right. So if you learn it, use it as a learning tool, it will like I said, I've 10x'd my skills without a doubt. And I'm only
amazing. I'm so happy just to hear that. That's amazing. Yeah, and I would say two things to that. The first thing is, I would look at it like AI is not a solution. It's like a high functioning virtual like assistant. So it'll help you deal with the grunt work, but having someone with your skill set who understands programming in PHP to go into the function and kind of figure out what makes sense, what doesn't, tweak it, that last 10% is all the difference. And that's the difference between knowing how to program and not knowing how to program. So yeah, I think you nailed it spot on.
I got to give you a good analogy. I was thinking, you know, because of course there are so many people who are like resistant to AI, and especially I don't judge them because I understand where they're coming from, but like people that are, you know, programmers for 25 years who are extremely experienced and learned programming the hard way, and they could write full systems without barely looking anything up. You know what I mean? These people really hate AI, and especially you see in the colleges where they're trying to build all these tools where they could detect if your essay was written with AI or whatever. The analogy I give is, if you know, some people a little older than us will remember when the calculator came out. The schools were super anti the calculator. You have to learn how to do the math. You know, you're not always going to have a calculator on you. Well, spoiler alert, I always have a calculator on me, right? So
because you're an accountant, that's why. Because you were an accountant.
Exactly. You know, but what it became more important to learn how to use the calculator than it is to actually know how to do the math by hand. Now, it is important to understand mathematics on at least a basic or intermediate level, but to understand like college level math is not really applicable for most people in their day-to-day, but it's more important to actually know how to get to your answer if you need it, right? So the calculator became a tool. So these days, when you go to school, they actually allow you to use a calculator in the classroom because they understand that that's the tool that's going to be necessary in your life, that's going to be helpful for you. So I personally predict that AI is going to follow a similar trajectory, where right now they're anti it. They see it as like ruining education and a shortcut. But I think in the future, especially since AI is going to keep improving, I think that the world is going to eventually accept that the people who are going to be the most successful are going to be the people who understand how to use AI to their advantage, and they're in fact going to teach people how to use AI properly. And I think that possibly even in classes where they teach programming and things and computer science and things like that, they might teach you how to use AI responsibly in a way that could help you, in conjunction with teaching you basic theory and understanding how to build efficient systems and things like that. That's where I see things going.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. I almost feel like whenever something disruptively innovative enters the playing field of the economy or the schooling and the education system, there's an inherent knee-jerk reaction to reject it. And I think it's just impulsive. Like, it's like, oh, AI and the schooling system is not built to deal with AI. And they're almost telling you, hey, if you use AI, you're in trouble. But eventually they're going to come around and realize the onus is not on us not to use AI. The onus is on you to develop your schooling system in a way that still challenges the students, where they can still leverage AI. AI, like, we're not going to go about our life not using it. It's here. It's right in front of us. It's a tool like the calculator, like exactly like you mentioned. So it is a kind of a knee-jerk reaction for them to reject it, but it's part of a process. Eventually they're going to accept it, and then they're going to incorporate it, and then they're going to leverage it, and then they're going to tell you how to use it. So yeah, I do entirely agree. And you know, the best way to talk to something and to giving it, like, the best way to, I don't know, like, the best way to talk to AI is when you understand what it's doing at some level. So understanding programming will help you communicate with it effectively. It's not a magic solution. It's not a magic box. To some extent, it looks like it is. It's a natural language processor, and it almost seems magical in the sense that even the people who are making it don't necessarily understand how it derives at its results. But in the sense that it's all, you know, it's all zeros and ones at the end of the day. And I think, and understanding how these things work, it's like, it's important, because once you do that, then you can do that effectively. It's not a magic solution. It's a tool. It's a tool like anything else. And learning how to use a hammer is important, and learning how to use AI is important. I entirely agree. But pulling this back now to PHP. So you've 10x your PHP, and that's amazing, because it's like, now you look at websites, and you know, you kind of realize how the the simplicity is almost a trap. Like the second you subscribe to tools and platforms that are super simplistic, you're subject to the mercy of its simplicity. And it's usually it's not about being simple. There's a spectrum. There's a trade-off too. The more simple it is, the more human friendly it is, the less computer friendly it is. Right? And you got to find that sweet spot where you put the least amount of energy and you get the highest value back. And you don't want something that just solves a solution. These templates look really good. You pay $5 for them, you plug it in an hour, you're done. But then if you're projecting anything beyond your immediate site, and you're looking a year ahead or 2 years ahead, it's a completely different calculus. So, it sounds like you've completely understood that, and you're heading now to move to programming. But even more so, it's not just about websites, because now you know how to program. You've broadened your horizons of thought, and you're probably now thinking into other stuff like creating now these custom platforms for charity crowdfunding, which is all super cool. So tell me a little bit now, how has your programming helped you envision this new project, and what are your plans for this new project?
Yeah, well, for sure. Even before that, I'll tell you that I was super proud of myself a couple months ago, more like maybe about a year ago. I built a website for a client who has a demolition company, and then they came back to me a few months later, and they're like, "Hey, random question: do you build CRMs?" And I was like, "Yeah, now I do." So I built a CRM from scratch by myself, with literally no help from anybody other than obviously leveraging AI.
Sorry, did you use WordPress? Was your CRM built on WordPress?
I
Cool,
did,
very cool.
but WordPress at this point for me is really nothing more than a framework because I barely use.
Right, it's a toolbox. It's like an operating system for websites. Yeah,
Exactly, and it has built-in functions that are really helpful and classes and things like that are great. But yeah, so I built an entire thing in WordPress, but like I said, it's all custom and thousands of lines of code. And it's a full-fledged CRM that keeps track of every job that they enter into the system. They assign it to drivers. The drivers get notified.
wow.
They enter information on the job and a dedicated, each job has a page. They put the information in there. It gets updated to the system. The admin gets notified when a job is completed. It keeps track. They have a stopwatch built in where they could keep track of how long the project was. There's automated billing summaries in a separate section. They can mark things billed. There's also they keep track of their containers where they keep the debris in, and it keeps track of the location of every container based on where it was from the last job when it was marked completed. There's a whole system, and I did all this by myself, and it is 100% due to only because of AI. I literally had nobody help me, and I impressed myself by doing that. And the only reason I'm saying this is because if anybody's listening who thinks that they could have a head for programming, but it seems like overwhelming to learn. Really, all it takes is just choosing a project, understanding the different components that go into making that project work, and then taking one component at a time and just really trying to dive into understanding how that works, and just asking AI to help you every step of the way and be patient, and it's super doable.
Well said. It comes down to willpower. It's like fuel in the tank. You've got an engine, you've got a body, you've got two eyes, you've got a fully developed brain. You just need to have your priorities. And if you want to do something, you're willing to invest 3-4 months into it. Yeah, exactly. It started off originally where if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library, pull out a book,
Right.
go to school. And then the internet kind of took over where you have everything at your fingertips. You can Google. And now you have someone who's going to organize these search results, kind of compile all the results into a very coherent response and articulate exactly what you asked with a very clear response. And it's just like, what more excuse do you have? In fact, it's just like there's nothing there's just nothing left to say
That's pretty much it. Exactly.
yeah.
If you want
It's
to
putting
do
it. It's spoon feeding it. It's putting it in your mouth. It's just telling you to open up your mouth and swallow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. But yeah, you just asked about the crowdfunding stuff. So, so as you probably know, so in the Jewish world, charities raised online, tremendous amount of charities raised online every single year, literally millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And the way that's typically done, and this is how it's worked for already quite a few years, is with crowdfunding technology, very similar to GoFundMe, where you'll have a page and you put some information about what your cause is that you're trying to raise money for, and then you have a form where people could enter their information, put in a credit card, and donate, and it keeps track of how much money was raised, and shows all your donors, and if you wanted to write a comment, and all that. So there's a couple of problems with this industry. I shouldn't say problems, but there's a few things that frustrate people in general about this industry, and one is the sheer cost of it. A lot of these platforms cost, some of them take a percentage of everything you raise, or some take a flat fee, but it could be anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000, $10,000 sometimes per campaign. You have some very large not-for-profits who are running campaigns every year to cover their budgets, and they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars every single time. So that gets frustrating. Another issue is sometimes you want to keep control of your data. You have a donor base, people are donating. You may want to have that in a place that's completely private, that's not part of a bigger platform, that's owned by somebody else. Other people could get access to it. I've heard of data leaks and things like that, and
Right.
people are getting email blasts for things they never signed up for. And you want to have control over your data. Another issue
Right.
is when you're on a platform, it's essentially a SaaS platform. You don't really have any control over the features. So you have what they give you, and each platform has its own cool stuff that the other one doesn't have, but you really never have everything in one place. So
Right.
sometimes it's frustrating. So what I said,
It's always a trade-off.
yeah. So I set out to solve all these problems. And the way I did that is I started building organizations, white label crowdfunding platforms. What that means is they have their own private crowdfunding platform in a sense, but it's on their own website under their own domain, which they own. They pay once to have it built, and then they own it. So the price issue is taken care of because they pay once. It is an investment, of course, but there's a lot of value there clearly. So they pay once, and then they have it forever. They can run as many campaigns as they want in the future. And as far as data, well, it's their own private website, so nobody has access to that. And lastly, with features, well, since it's custom, so every client, we build it around their specific use case. Everybody has their one thing that they're like, oh, the way we do it, it would make my life really easier if I could integrate with that CRM, or if I could, have whatever kind of feature it is. So since it's custom, sky's the limit, So we've done this successfully
Right.
now times, and we're seeing a good
That's
response.
that's super cool. I want to pull this back, just a quick question here. For when you were in yeshiva, what advice would you give to someone who's in the yeshiva system, who's doing just fine, but if they want to find a parnasa or a success system outside of yeshiva, what advice would you give them? I know you've mentioned AI, but if you were to give them like more of a complete answer, how would you approach it?
That's a great question. You know what? Because it entirely depends on your circumstances. It really does. Some people are part of families that are more open to the idea that they might be working, go into the workforce in the future, and they're more supportive of that and are more likely to foster an environment where they have access to information to learn and to build skill sets. And if that's you, then you're in a good spot. But some people aren't, and then you're gonna have to wait until later in life to really take control of that. So
Right.
I would say that the most important thing you could do, besides for focusing on being in yeshiva, is kind of already start thinking about what it is that you'd be passionate about, that you would be interested in when given the chance, theoretically, because the last thing you want is being 26 years old, having 3 kids, and getting ready to jump into the workforce and having absolutely no idea what you want to do.
Right.
First go through that, and sometimes people have to try 2 or 3 things before they end up where they
And
want.
there's like a 3-year buffer at minimum till you develop enough skill set to be effective
Sure.
at any specific discipline. Yeah.
That is, and that could
And
be
if
devastating.
you can help, you can offset some of that by going to college. But if you brute force your way through the process, yeah, you still need that time.
You still need that time. So I'd say the
Right.
most important thing is to devote some time to think about what you're interested in. And once you know what you're interested in, then you at least have a chance to find ways to research it, or to get some knowledge, or because when you're passionate about something, even subconsciously you just gravitate towards that thing, and you notice you might hear something in the news or read something interesting in a book, but you're building this database in your head of like knowledge about this topic that could help you in the future. Like if I knew that I was going to be building websites one day, I don't know, I may have found a book on programming theory lying around somewhere that I would have picked up and read. I may have,
Right.
like this if I had never thought about it, and if I came across something I just wouldn't have. So, in other words, you may not get that formal education at that point in your life. You may not have access to real projects that you could work on that are going to develop a skill set. But you can, at the very least, prepare yourself for when you're ready to jump into something, to know what it is that you want to do, and have enough information in your head already to make it much easier to train yourself. You'll have a background already, some sort of background.
Got it. Yeah, well said. And one more question for you here. So when you were programming, what did you find the most challenging part of programming? Like what specific function or structure, what you found most difficult?
I would say I still struggle with complex SQL queries.
Oh, like joins and stuff?
Yeah, I'm getting better. Sometimes I just have to rely on the AI to just, I'll tell it exactly what I want to do. Like I want this from this table, that from that table. I need to compare it like this and whatever.
Right.
Just to write it is kind of hard, you know?
Yeah, like the thing about SQL is like it's super, super easy until it's super, super hard. Like it's like there's no in between. It goes nuclear. Like it's perfectly simple select queries, and then you have these complex
you're like,
inner joins.
Select star from WP
Right.
user. Wow, this is magic. You know?
Yeah.
And, next thing you know, you're pulling data from 5 different tables, and you know it's different. I was just gonna think if there's anything else I could think of that presented. You know, I remember something which doesn't seem hard now, but it did when I first started learning about it. So,
and that's very typical. Sorry to cut you off. That's very typical with computer science. It's very difficult, and then you wake up the next day and it's a part of your vocabulary.
Yeah. So this isn't even like, I don't even know if it was like the logic. It's not the logic behind it that was hard. It was just, well, I'll say what it is. So basically, writing AJAX functions. I used the jQuery AJAX function. So just understanding, I had to wrap my head around like what did I actually like. It never worked. Every time I tried it, it never worked. Like it just didn't work. So
you're saying like manipulating the DOM, because AJAX is not necessary.
The use case specifically I'm talking about is basically, let's say, inserting information or retrieving information from the database without a page refresh.
Right. Okay, I see.
So
yeah,
basically, it just took me a while to understand the different pieces behind it, where we have the DOM, we have information here.
Right.
We need to go to the server, so the AJAX function is what facilitates that connection, sends the information over. Then I need a PHP function, which is going to capture
on the other end, right?
Do what it needs to do, and then send back a response. And then, you know, that's something that took a while for me also just to understand, like the response.
Yeah.
How I could like interpret that from the JavaScript side and display it in a readable way. And you know, these are really not that complicated. Maybe if somebody would have sat down and explained it to me, I would have, you know, maybe it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But you know, and also like if it gets sent back as JSON, or if it's not JSON, like you have to, like it you know, it might just be when it comes back, you might just do like console.log response, or it might be response dot.
Right. It might return as an object, as an array, as a JSON array. Yeah.
So when I was brand new, like I didn't learn everything in order properly, so I was just jumping into stuff. So a lot of this was foundational stuff. If you went to school, you would learn about objects and arrays,
correct,
and data types, and how to access parts of an object or an array or things like that. And I just didn't. So I just learned on the job. So that was very frustrating, you know, when I did that a couple of times.
Yeah, so much to unpack there. So first of all, you don't actually learn specifics in school. Well, you do, but the specifics aren't the specifics you actually use or always use in your day-to-day. What you learn in computer science is, or at least going to school in a structured way, is you learn how to learn. You learn how to solve problems in an organized and effective manner. That's really what you take away from school. And
by the way,
I think
you just defined computer programming.
You're right. Yeah, that's exactly it. And what you described just now is spot on, because web development itself is not necessarily complex in your average use case. It's not necessarily complex in a object oriented and an actual computer logic structure. But the environment in which you're operating in takes a bit of learning. You've got these layers. So you've got your front end, you've got your document object model with your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript, and then you have your backend, you have your PHP server, and then that connects to your database. And learning how to communicate with those in certain conditions, and how to send something, how to pull it back effectively. What's the context? What can you reference? What can't you reference? It gets really confusing. So yeah, and it's even harder for you in the sense that you're learning it as you kind of go along your day-to-day life, and you're actually encountering real life problems. It's more complicated because it's much harder to reverse engineer the context, to kind of like tap away at every possibility and see what works, what doesn't, and learn from that, as opposed to being told in a school book, here are the different options, here's how it works, and then your brain kind of conceptualizes it that way, and then you apply it to real problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you actually said is very interesting. So you didn't say programming was hard. You said learning the environment in which programming, like learning how to effectively use Ajax, is difficult, and I found that an interesting answer.
That's what I was trying to get at. I was like stumbling before I actually said Ajax. I was trying to explain that like it's not a like computer science challenge. It was more of like a
Oh, and it's not a computer like a semantics programming challenge, but it's like how web development works is very confusing.
Yeah, programming itself, honestly, has not been a challenge for me. I really enjoy it, and I guess it's just it's like my brain, I guess, works in a logical way, but like it's like I always understand. It's funny how I say it, but like remember I said in the beginning how like if you really understand how things work, you could code in English and AI gives it back to you in code.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that I knew how to program before I knew how to program. In the sense
because you learned Gemara. You learned how to
that's
maintain
right.
a train of thought, how to keep logic, build on one.
Everything has to.
Right.
Basically, like I have a developer who works for me. He's been with me for now, a nice few years, and he was working for me back when I was building Divi sites, and I didn't know the first thing about CSS even. You know what I mean? So.
Right. That's amazing, by the way. It's self-taught. Like I have so much respect for that. It's so cool to hear that you're doing PHP and you learned CSS on your own, right?
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that like even like at that point when I knew nothing about programming, every time I asked him to create something for me, I would call him and we would discuss how he's going to do it. Like we would discuss I would tell him, okay, so here's what I need. I assume you're going to do it like this, and he'd be like, or we can just get it from here, or we would literally go through it, and we would build out the function like verbally without using any programming language per se, but that's really what it is. English is a language, and JavaScript is a language, and PHP is a language. So
it's spot on. So two things I take from that. I take first of all is that you made the most of every opportunity. So you have a programmer, you're hiring him to render services. But instead of having him just do it, you're using every opportunity as a learning opportunity. You're not saying, hey, do it. You're saying, hey, you can do it, but tell me how you did it. Like, let's talk about the problem. It doesn't actually make any effect in terms of what you're focusing on right now, but you're always kind of thinking ahead, which is amazing, which is the difference between someone who is very successful and makes the most of every opportunity and becomes something significantly different in 2-3 years from now, and compared to someone who just remains stagnant. So that's really great to hear. And also one thing quickly here is what you're literally describing is you're spot on. Like computer science can be broken down into two ways, into two separate sections. You have your syntax, your specific language, your words, let, if, while, do this, do that. And then you have your semantics, which are your logic. And essentially the hard part of computer science is not the syntax, but from the outside it looks like it. So you look at some C code and you're like, oh, this looks like Chinese. This looks super complicated. That's the easiest part of computer science, right? The hardest part of computer science is maintaining an elegant thought process, clear semantics. And if you have the semantics and you can effectively feed that to GPT, you can give it clear logical steps. You can flowchart your way through the problem. Yeah, that's really it. And then GPT is going to do the grunt work for you. And that's really it. And you're giving credit to GPT, Yekusiel, but really you're doing 90% of the problem solving.
I appreciate that. But like that's how it's always been for me. I've always complained to like my developer that like it's funny how you explained that the syntax is not the hard part. For me, the syntax was the hard part. Like
from the outset, because again, learning, if you don't know how to speak French and you want to say I like candy in French, it's complicated. And you look at it, or you look at Chinese, and it's like a simple basic sentence. It looks on the outside because you don't know Chinese. But when you learn Chinese, there's nothing complex about that. Yeah.
Right. But like I'm still not a syntax whiz. Like I'm much more of a, of like the logic.
The logic. Well, that you just need to do more of the syntax.
Exactly.
The same way, yeah. You come better at English the more you use it, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's the one thing where I would say that using something like ChatGPT could maybe hinder the process a little bit, because there's something about like forcing yourself to like actually write something out and like seeing if it works, or if you wrote something wrong, or like
Right.
if there's a better way to write it or something like that. Like,
Right.
well, that's kind of going through that process is what probably really trains you to do that well. Whereas ChatGPT will just spit it out for you 90% of the time. The first time they give it to you, it's written in the most efficient way. Sometimes you can challenge it back and it'll give you something better, but a lot of the time it definitely knows how to write. Like that's not ChatGPT's
Right.
problem. It's a language. It knows it as well as it knows English. So, so that's probably where I'm not.
Well,
really as fast, but
in fact, sorry to cut you off, but in fact,
go ahead.
whenever you give it human-like instructions, it's in most cases it goes ahead and it writes a script in Python to process your requests. Sometimes and you can ask it sometimes if it's being really stupid. So this is a whole other conversation, but this is called prompt engineering. I mean, you can change many professions that are being replaced by GPT by just simply good prompt engineering. And a lot of times when you're kind of hitting a wall with GPT, I would tell it to spit back the Python code that it's used to create to process my instructions, and then I'll say, hey, just change that code, put it back in your system, and now let's continue. So yeah, it's not that magical. It's really not entirely a magic box. Yeah.
I've done that, and not with Python per se, but with English. Sometimes I'll say, all right, so you told me such and such. Please explain me in a detailed manner how you arrived at that conclusion.
Right.
And it will tell me, and sometimes then I'll spot exactly where the problem is, and I'll be like, that is incorrect.
Yes.
And I'll tell them why, and then they'll be like, okay, actually you are. They're super accommodating. There's no ego involved. They love to tell you, oh yes, you're right. Yeah. That's kind of
yeah. Oh, always. Yeah. And it's like your calculator in a very narrow vertical is superhuman. It's really good at doing division. It's really good at doing multiplication and addition, and better than humans. But it's incredibly stupid in other capacities. And I think that narrow scope is just slightly broader. So you see GPT do things that are amazing. It'll save you like an hour of work. And even if you have to talk to it like it's stupid, it'll take an hour of grunt work and turn it into, maybe 3-4 minutes, which is incredible. But in some ways, it's still really stupid. It's really stupid. It's not replacing humans today.
But here's the thing: if this is the point we're at, I think I started using ChatGPT when it was in beta. I don't think it's more than a year and a half ago. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's more than
We're at an inflection point where the rate of change for technologies is our ability to control the change is definitely fleeting. Like we're barely able to hold on because we're not talking generations, we're talking months. And that's very interesting to put your head around.
You're right about months, but I invite you to do a thought exercise and think about where we're going to be in 5 years. Like, imagine we're exponential growth. It's kind of crazy to think. So yeah. So therefore,
did you see Neuralinks? I know you have so many thoughts. I'm sorry. Did you see? There was an interview with I forgot his name, but he did an interview with one of the first people to ever get the Neuralinks injections in the brain, and he was playing chess with his brain. He was just literally looking at the screen, and he was playing. Yeah, you kind of get that like shock factor the first time you use GPT. You ever like the first time you use GPT? And you're like, what the fuck? Like,
I can't actually.
You're like, I just asked you to write something. I just asked you to correct this, and like, you just spit it out in like 4 seconds, and it's like really, really good. The first time you experience GPT like this, the hair on your skin rises, and you're like, this is like, I have to tell this about someone, and you don't realize that like, hey, other people know about this, right? And it's the same feeling I got when I saw that, like, the Neuralink, and I'm like. Yeah, we are losing control of our ability to control technology. Like, because usually technology would have an incremental advancement, and then it would open this economic floodgates, and then we'd adapt, right? And then it would push forward, and we would leverage the economy to kind of further the technology. And it's this kind of like symbiotic, relationship. And we're at a point now where there's no real application. Like, we're not matching the application with the progress, and the progress is just building on itself to the point where the limiting factor is not the technology anymore. It's the people processing it. Like, we are the weakest link in this process.
So to move as fast as it's ready to take
And we constantly think that we're incredibly special. And the point is, like, human intelligence is not an incredible benchmark in many capacity. Like it's not like GPT is going to be like at the edge of human intelligence and be like, oh, this is a huge hurdle I have to cross. It's going to blow right through human intelligence. And
I never thought of it that way, but yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter what we think of. That's the problem.
This is the best we had until now, right? So
Yeah.
naturally we put ourselves on a pedestal. It's not because of ego. We quite literally were the best we had, the best the universe
We were
had.
evolution. We were evolution's grand
Yeah,
prize, I guess.
exactly.
Not to,
You know,
yeah, and yeah, and we were the epitome of intelligence in a broad capacity. Some animals are way smarter than us in a very narrow area, but yeah, I mean, and we're seeing this natural, and it's really just a natural language processor. It's not artificial. It's not generalized artificial intelligence. But
right?
the point here is we're getting a taste we're bridging the gap of what we feel is purely theoretical and what is practical. It's like we talked 20, 30 years ago, like AI, it's like, oh, is it going to plateau? Is there a limitation? And we're starting to realize that if it is going to plateau, it's not going to plateau for a while. Like we've got a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
ground here to cover. Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, fun stuff,
It's
man.
funny. I'm reminded of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I bet you read that one. I'm sure you read that one. Did you?
Can I say I haven't?
Of course you can. Of course you
Yeah.
can. Well, that book was written a while ago, and there is a supercomputer in that book where it's like this major supercomputer, and they ask it, "What is?" I think they said, "What is the secret to the universe?" It's been a while since I read it. Too. But they asked like one of these super
Simple, basic, but very
questions
hard
that
questions to
nobody has an
answer.
answer to, right?
Yeah.
And it took like I don't know. I don't remember how long in the book it says it took, but I don't know. God knows how many years it took for the supercomputer to process. And they're all waiting. I don't know if it was even more than one lifetime. But like they made it sound like a really long time.
Right.
I was waiting for it to be.
And then
able
they
to
gave like the simplest answer, like to spend time with the people you love.
No. If I remember correctly, the answer was 52. Like in other words, we were not nearly smart enough to understand. We're not as smart.
Oh, I see.
The answer
I
is
see. I see.
52. We just don't know. We don't understand how that's the answer. It's like we're
That's
asking
that's
questions way bigger than us.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
And there's a limit to what we can even think. And the computer was already way past the minute in
And
understanding.
we even impose the fact that we think that every question is supposed to have an answer. It's like we impose our way of thinking on these systems. But just one quick thing to end off here, which it's going to open the floodgates of conversation right now. But AI and quantum computers, it's all kind of connected. But we're heading into a realm where even systematic computers are becoming just a whole. It's just the floodgates are about to blow open as well. Like even the U.S. government just recently, not too recently, but they since they see this coming, they passed laws that are forcing banks and certain institutions to change how they encrypt data to become quantum proof. So like our typical RSA structures, our typical encryptions today are not like bulletproof. It's just a basic trade-off. Like it's just the way encryption and protection works today. It's just basic question of convenience. Am I willing to spend 70 years of my life guessing this password? Right? Or 100 years of my life, or 20,000 years of my life? And the answer is no. And that's why a password is considered good, right? Because it's just a matter of trial, of guessing, right? That's with quantum computers, where we're heading. Essentially, the way the process works of solving problems is it's kind of called like superposition, where all the potentials are experienced at once, and then your answer would collapse to a specific answer, which is the one that works. And so like all our credit cards, everything protected is going to completely collapse. And we're not like quantum computers exist, right? But just the amount of qubits that we can process is not enough to reach computer supremacy, quantum supremacy, where the applications are more convenient using quantum computers than we are using conventional computers. But the point is, we're being squeezed in concern at every direction possible. And it's like it's becoming very hard to imagine what life is going to be like you just said, in 20, 30 years from now. And you look out into the stars and you wonder, how many, where life is. It could be this universe is teeming with life. But maybe like we're at the very top of the mountain. Like this is as good as it gets, and then eventually something's gonna go wrong, and we're all gonna just blow ourselves up. So yeah.
Awesome. Mikey, you've been an awesome interviewer. Now I'm gonna ask
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, my first question for you is: do you want us to achieve quantum supremacy? Do you want to see the next level of supercomputers who could do all the things that are possible in theory, but we're only limited by the physical limitations that are in place with computers right now? Do you want to see us get there, or is there something that you're afraid of that you think will be meaningfully worse?
I think wanting. I think the question of. I'm sorry to shut down your question, but I'll elaborate on it. But I think wanting is an irrelevant question. It really doesn't matter what I want. But I guess more importantly is what's going to happen. What do I think is going to happen? And I have a little bit of a dystopian view on all this. I mean, I'm not. I believe that we're almost like we're almost like designed to pass the baton of life from biology to technology. We're extremely sensitive to our environment. Temperature needs to be perfect. Our rooms need to be symmetrical. And you put us literally anywhere else in this universe, and our eyes will instantly pop out of their sockets. So we're extremely sensitive to our environment. Even in theory, if we can fly a rocket from this planetary system to Alpha Centauri, which is 4.5 light years away, it's the mind that's the limiting factor. It's the psychology, it's the depression, it's the worries. Even getting people to Mars is such a sensitive process where we're selecting people who have a mind that can sustain that. And it's not about having a healthy mind. It's almost about being crazy and being able to be alone and travel to a planet that's completely empty. So where I'm going with this is that it as a group, as a species, it's almost like we can't marshal the correct emotional response when it comes to AI. So when we talk about something that's truly existential, like nuclear winters and nuclear catastrophes, it's always a sober and serious conversation. There's no jokes, right? But when we talk about AI and we see robots at Boston Dynamics doing backflips, it's always like it's cute. It's like our brain can't compute, and it's maybe like we're designed to do that, and it's like inevitable because we have this intrinsic goodness or benevolence with machines. But although we're entirely conscious, and here's the point here, we're entirely conscious that we are planting our own demise, and we're making ourselves entirely irrelevant and replaceable. But the only question we ask is, how do we make this iPhone faster sooner, right? So it's falling backwards, where in any other capacity, like we're logically calibrated not to act in a self-preserving manner. But when it comes to technology, we're doing the exact opposite. So to answer your question, it doesn't really matter what I want. It's what's going to happen. And I do believe that AI is an existential threat, and I do believe that it's a fool's concept to think that we are going to be able to control these tools when they're going to become exponentially, by definition, smarter than us. So sorry, it's a bit of a depressing view, but at the same time, we're in this ride together, so it's all good.
So that actually brings me right into my second question, and maybe you kind of answered it. My other question is going to be, do you believe in Rise of the Machines? We've all seen the sci-fi movies. Do you believe? Is it possible that machines could get to the point where we literally don't have control? Like, do you think? I guess my question is more of a technological question. I just don't know enough to answer this question. Is it really possible for machines to get to a point where we cannot just flip the switch and turn them off, but they'll be smart enough and have interest to connect themselves to other sources where at some point, some network that they're connected to, that we literally, it's a fun topic. Everybody talks about it.
Yeah, it's a very fun topic. So again,
I would a scary topic. Let's not,
no. So again, I would challenge the premise of your question. Your question insinuates and asserts that that the growth of technology, whether they become conscious, becoming conscious with progress, would assume that they would have the same ambitions as us. And in order to really understand why I take issue with the premise of your question is, it's hard for us to take a leap upwards, but we can kind of see the chasm and the difference between looking at a leap below us. So we are here talking about calculus and algebra and quantum mechanics and computer science, but if you look at a monkey, it really just cares about that banana. Right? And you can sit down and start teaching a monkey calculus and addition and subtraction. It might be able to do addition. It might be able to memorize stuff on the screen, but it doesn't understand the philosophical implications and the underlying value. And at the end of the day, it just wants to do that algebra or remember what's on that screen so it can get that banana. Right? So it will be foolish for them to think, imagine they got all together and be like, imagine like we got like these things that we create and all they're going to want to do is steal our bananas because bananas are awesome. Right? Mm-hmm. You're imposing your philosophical assumptions, your value system on them. And this even broadens the conversation to when we look into the stars and we're looking for life, and we're assuming this universe should be teeming with life. Why haven't we seen it? It's one of the solutions to the Fermi paradox,
They're not
which
interested in that.
well, yeah, but you just exactly. But like, you assume they care to be expansionist and territorial. You assume, it's like you're not going to pull over on the side of your road on the highway to look at a bunch of ants, right?
Right.
But if those ants are on a real estate, like are on a yard that you're building that you're going to build a house on, you're gonna destroy them all without a second thought. Right?
Right.
So, maybe we're just not an inconvenience to them. They don't care to come to our planet and say hello. Like, we're going to be amazed, but they're going to be like, hey, it's just ants. Like, who cares? I have to go to somewhere else. So to answer your question, it's really hard for me to know what their value system would be.
I don't want to cut you off. Just to clarify, you're making fair points. My question wasn't so much, will this happen? My question is more, do
you think it can happen?
The capability of doing this should they choose to.
100%, because you're constantly optimizing.
That's where.
So, what's his name? You should Google the paperclip maximizer when we hang up, and it's pretty much just saying we become more and more optimized, where we just start like literally optimizing at the level of atoms. And eventually we'll become a lot more efficient. Like, we're just going to be just an energy system for these tools, and 100%. Star Trek probably did a pretty good job. If we were to like go into the future a few hundred years, that might be somewhat what it's like. Who knows? Anyways, but we probably should wrap it up because we normally do like 25 minutes, but you've been so fun to talk to. We're inching to an hour. Yeah. But okay, so Yekusiel, thank you so much for your time, and it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we should definitely do this again.